halls of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10, the 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tavon Austin.
But Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
Leave no doubt tonight. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season.
And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
And now recorded from the CRW studios in Almost Heaven, West Virginia, it's the Country Roads webcast with your host, Jorden Cruz.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into episode 217 of the CRW podcast here, one that we're titling Transfer Signing Superlatives. Over this past week, West Virginia officially signed 30-plus of the transfers that, of course, they've had committed, as they've done a great job with this transfer portal class. So I figured no better time than the present to kind of go through. And you remember when you were in high school and the end of the year, they'd name their superlatives, prettiest, best smile, funniest, class clown, all that stuff. So we're going to go through, we're going to name our transfer signing superlatives. I'm going to pick out my biggest impact on offense. That's one of the superlatives. Biggest impact on defense. My top 5 overall. Those are just some of the superlatives I'm going to go over for the transfer signings when we get to the main segment. So that's what's on the docket for today. That's what the title of the episode is about here. But before we get to that, we got some really fun Mountaineer news topics to talk about here as well that include some late additions to the 2025 West Virginia football recruiting class. Some players that may help right away as freshmen coming in. I think we got some really good additions here to talk about, as 4 players have joined the West Virginia 2025 recruiting class over the past couple of days prior to me releasing this episode. So not only do we get to talk transfers, which have been the subject as of late, we get to talk a little bit more high school recruiting here late in the cycle with some really nice additions here that we'll talk about momentarily, along with some other fun subjects here in the Mountaineer news segment. So let's get to that. Let's talk some WVU sports news before we get to our main portion where we provide our transfer signing superlatives. All right, leading off our WVU sports news, how about the Mountaineers finishing number 22 in the Learfield Directors Cup, number 2 in the Big 12. What's the Directors Cup? It kind of tracks all your sports across, whatever season. This would be from the fall season. And West Virginia, number 22nd in the nation, and number 2 in the Big 12, as you hear, released by Mike Montoro last week. With fall sports completed, West Virginia University currently stands in 22nd place in the 2024-25 Learfield Cup Directors standings. Mountaineers compiled 190 points this fall, 90 in cross country, 25 in football, 25 in women's soccer, and 50 in men's soccer, which ranks them second in the Big 12, according to the current standings, just there behind BYU, who's currently number 4 in the country, actually. So West Virginia doing a good job across multiple sports, really, to have this ranking. So wanted to share that here on our WVU Sports News Update. And then how about some Mountaineer adjacent news, some guys that are doing good in the NFL. And, of course, many Mountaineers had some good NFL seasons. Geno Smith still doing his thing with the Seahawks. Rasul Douglas had a late playoff run with the Bills. But the one we want to talk about here is Zach Frazier, named to the all-rookie team PFWA. And no surprise there, a starter from, his rookie season. I think he will be, a consistent, one of the better centers in the league there with the Steelers. I think he's shown that with the great numbers he put up as a rookie. Great job by Zach Frazier, and great to see him be honored for that. So a previous West Virginia Mountaineer offensive lineman honored by the NFL, but how about a current West Virginia offensive lineman that, I guess now we can say former West Virginia offensive lineman as well, that's going to be joining him in the NFL real soon? And that, of course, is none other than Wyatt Milam. As West Virginia football puts out on their social media here, ready for Sundays, he was number 52 on ESPN's top 100 players list of the year. So in nearly the top half of that list, no surprise there. One of the best tackles in college football, if not the best in my opinion, and should be a first-round draft pick coming up here in a few months in the NFL draft. So excited to see where Wyatt Milam lands, but ranks as the number 52nd best player in college football. And then we've got some more coaching additions that were officially put out on social media. A lot of these we knew already, including one of these being a friend of the show. But Garrett Hirsch, named Associate Director of Scouting, as is Tyar Lessick, and Nick Bankston. All three of those announced there. And then we also had William Bernhardt announced as another assistant strength and conditioning coach for football there for WVU. And then a couple others that were officially announced: Patrick McCain as the Assistant Director of Football Operations and Isaac Miller as an assistant to the head coach. But then, as we've been mentioned previously on some live streams on the YouTube channel, on the Country Roads webcast there, West Virginia already going through winter workouts. They're hitting that tour of duty, as they like to call it, under Rich Rod. But we have our weight room warriors of the week from last week. They were KK Tarnu, Nico Marchiol, Landon Livingston, and Reed Carrico named the weight room warriors. It's a tongue twister there. Say that 3 times fast. Weight room warriors, weight room warriors, weight room warriors. But KK Tarnu, Nico Marchio, and Landon Livingston honored there for that already. So we'll get to see that coming out throughout the offseason and get to see who's doing a great job in these offseason workouts. And there's some that were recognized on the current team. But how about some players that are going to be joining that current team? Let's do our recruiting update here, as West Virginia has added 4 names to the 2025 class here, and we'll talk about that to wrap up our WVU sports segment here before we get to our main segment to talk about our transfer superlatives. All right, so a long list of 20-plus names for West Virginia in the class has just grown. We added 4 in the recent days. You see them highlighted here on the screen if you're watching the video version, which appreciate you guys tuning into any version of this episode that you watch, whether you listen on the audio side, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it there, you can find us. But be sure, if you're listening on that side, leave us a rating. That helps a ton, preferably a 5-star one. If you are on the video side watching on our YouTube channel or through our friends over at WVSportsNow.com, and we appreciate them, be sure to hit the thumbs up button on the video. That helps the algorithm. And subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on WVU football news. But Kamarius Bomer has been added for the West Virginia Mountaineers, an athlete out of the state of South Carolina. And I think Kamarius Bomer and Armani Weaver both kind of can talk about them simultaneously here. Similar in size and stature, 5'10", 180 for Bomer, 5'10", 170 for Weaver. Both from South Carolina, and interestingly enough, high school teammates, both coming from the same high school. And both of these guys are extremely fast. We're talking about some speedsters here. Both listed as athlete, could play on either side of the ball. From what I understand, Weaver is going to be playing receiver. He's recruited as a slot receiver. Bomar, they really haven't quite decided yet. He's really talented on either side. He could end up a receiver as well, or could end up playing defensive back. But both of these two guys come courtesy of Rod West, who are already paying dividends with his recruiting, right? That's one of the things I talked about when we hired Rod West to be the cornerbacks coach coming over from App State, was he is known as a good recruiter as well. And here you are, 2 late additions. Both these guys have been previously committed to App State. Both super speedy, athletic guys that West Virginia is able to add now late in the process after the Appalachian State coaching change. They're able to get out of their letters of intent, and of course Rod West helps bring them to Morgantown. I think Blaine Stewart played a part in Armani Weaver's recruiting as well, with him being a slot receiver. So you add both of those 2 guys, who I'm really excited about. We'll pull up the 247 page on both of them momentarily, but let's talk about that, because we get 2 guys from South Carolina from the same high school, kind of courtesy of Rod West, if you will, there. And then we get 2 more in-state guys to add to this class late, which is really exciting to see. You get athlete Max Anderson, who played for Spring Mills, quarterback there, a 6'1", 208 prospect. And then you get Carter Zulani, who's kind of listed as a tight end. If you look up his recruiting page there, he's from Bridgeport. But from what I understand, West Virginia's recruiting him to be a defensive lineman, which I think he kind of projects better there with his size, especially if you can get him in the strength and conditioning program, get his weight up, obviously. But with a 6'6", could be even 6'7" frame by the time he gets here. That's good size to have there on your defensive line, so I like that move. And I like West Virginia, of course, adding in-state prospects. And Max Anderson listed as an athlete, but from what I understand, West Virginia is going to allow him the chance to try out at quarterback first, so he's coming in as a QB, so he can add another QB to that room, another young guy to that room, and a depth piece there for this season. You should have plenty of arms there for practice, camp, and all those good things. And Max Anderson, we'll see what happens in the future. Obviously going to take some development, but you never know what it could turn into, and you love seeing the in-state prospects staying home and West Virginia extending them the offer. So those are the 4 additions: Kamarius Bomar from South Carolina, Amani Weaver from South Carolina, Max Anderson from West Virginia, and Carter Zulani from West Virginia as well. Let's take a look at their 247 pages here to round out this update, talk a little bit about each of them, starting, of course, with Kamarius Bomar, who I talked about there briefly. 5'10", 180, from Westside High School there in South Carolina. Athlete, but you see the grade here, 88 as a 3-star here on 247, and so you know how the grading system kind of works. Once you hit 90, that puts you into 4-star territory, so this is borderline 4-star recruit, a top 20 recruit in the state of South Carolina, nearly a top 30 athlete in the country, and I would say coming in now on the roster, he is arguably probably up there with the top 3 fastest players on the team already. That's the type of speed Kamarius Bomar's bringing in to WVU. So whether he plays defensive back or receiver, he's someone that could help on special teams as a return man as well. And the same goes for his friend Amani Weaver, who we'll talk about next. But you see, previously committed to App State, ends up switching to West Virginia here late in the cycle. Had other offers, of course, from Boston College, Coastal Carolina, East Carolina, just to name a few there, but of course comes to West Virginia, and I think a really good addition. So we add Kamarius Bomar, and then we have Armani Weaver, who is really interesting because, like I said, he's listed as a cornerback here, but West Virginia's bringing him in to be a slot receiver. Both these guys had the potential to play either side of the ball, both super athletic, both have great speed, which can't coach speed, right? That's something you got to go out and find. And Rich Rod, throughout his career, has done a great job of finding it, and I think he's got a lot of members on the staff that are going to help him do that. Talked about Rod West, and he's able to find a couple speedy guys right here. Armani Weaver, 5'10", 170 out of West Side High School. So you see there with the size, the 5'10", 170, kind of similar in frame to a lot of the successful inside slot receivers West Virginia's had in the past. And for his grade, another high-ranking 3-star that's borderline 4-star, just behind Bomar with the 87 grade there. Another top 25 player in the state of South Carolina. Multiple programs after him: Boston College, Cincinnati. I think Virginia Tech was in play as well, of course, App State, and then ultimately landing on West Virginia. So there's Armani Weaver. And then the 2 in-state additions here, we have Max Anderson from Spring Mills, who put up really good numbers, high touchdowns, low interceptions there. So that's something you like to see a quarterback do. And he also ran for over 1,000 yards, so he does have the athleticism to play in a Rich Rod offense. But good size at 6'1", 208 coming in. That frame could grow. He could end up being 6'2", still not done growing, I'm sure. And they will get his body right there with Mike Joseph and company. Coming from Spring Mills, though, from Martinsburg, West Virginia, 6'1", 208-pound prospect. Unranked, as a lot of times the in-state prospects are, but good to add a late in-state addition, and not a bad thing to ever add another arm to the QB room. Max Anderson coming in. And then, of course, last, we have Carter Zulani, who I think, after learning that he's going to be playing on the defensive line, I like this addition a little bit more as a tight end prospect. He was also unranked, much like Anderson there, but from Bridgeport, so, right up the road, right down the road, I guess I should say, from Morgantown. 6'6", 235. Could even be 6'7" by the time he gets here. I've heard he's still filling out as well, and could end up being a defensive lineman that molds into something as you develop him over his career as an in-state prospect. So those are the 4 recruiting additions West Virginia's added late here to the 2025 class that will round up our WVU Sports News segment, which now allows us to transition into the main segment that we want to talk about here, our transfer signing superlatives, and we will get to that momentarily. But before we do, we got to commend the WVU football staff, not only for the job they've done adding transfers, but also even adding these late high school additions. They've got their head on right. And so we got to talk a little bit about having your head on right, having your mind in the right place. And one of the best ways to do that, of course, is with Magic Mind. One of the things that I've tried to tell you guys about consistently since I've been using it for a while. But, only me talking about it from my perspective isn't always going to do the best job to let you guys know and let it come across, because that's only one person's opinion, right? You need always a second opinion. So I figured I'd come on here and tell you guys about my friend Mike, courtesy, of course, of his permission. But my friend Mike, I let him use Magic Mind, get the bundle there, because now not only do you have the great Magic Mind mental performance shot that I've been using for quite a while now that helps you throughout the day, helps you be more focused, helps you get things done, helps with recording podcasts, creating and editing videos here on the YouTube channel as well. And then, of course, they've accompanied that now with the Magic Mind Sleep, because you can't just be productive throughout the day. You have to get that good night's rest as well. You can't be tossing and turning. So they've added Magic Mind Sleep into the equation to help you invest into that mental wealth we've talked about on previous episodes. So I told my friend Mike about this about a week and a half ago, and he's been trying those. And so I hit him up, yesterday before I was going to record the podcast, because I wanted to get his review. So from Mike's words himself, never felt this rejuvenated in probably about 10 or 15 years. I feel like a high school kid again. So he's obviously, the first time using the Magic Mind regular. And before this, he also had, complained to me that he's someone that stays up late at night. He suffers from insomnia. And he said with the sleep, that's what really makes him feel extra rejuvenated in the mornings, because he's not really feeling that lackluster, groggy feeling in the mornings now. So from combining the both of them, he said from his own words that he feels like a high school kid again. So shout out to my friend Mike. Appreciate you using the Magic Mind and let me use your review here to tell people about it. But if you want to be like me, be like my friend Mike, you can, and you can do it with a discount from us here on the Country Roads webcast. And I can't recommend this enough, guys. The Magic Mind mental performance shot alone was enough, but now that they have the bundle, man, you're going to feel absolutely phenomenal. I've been feeling absolutely great myself, and they also offer you the 100% guarantee. So if you don't like it, you can get your money back. No questions asked after buying, but I guarantee you, you will not want that money back. You're going to love Magic Mind. So get the 45% off. Get the Magic Mind bundle here while you still can from us at the Country Roads webcast using our link, which that is magicmind.com/countryroadsjan. That's countryroadsjan. Use our link there. You'll be able to get 45% off the Magic Mind bundle, and you're going to feel great about it. You're going to be making great decisions, just like the WVU football coaching staff has with these transfer editions, with these late high school editions as well. So get 45% off Magic Mind using our link, magicmind.com/countryroadsjan. And we really appreciate our friends over at Magic Mind as always, but we are really appreciative of the WVU football coaching staff as well and the job they've been doing. So we're going to get to our main segment. I'm going to name my transfer signing superlatives, but I want to pull up the full list, because since the last time I talked with you guys, we did have a couple of late additions. One of them we knew about, Will Reed, coming into the offensive line, and I think this is a huge addition, probably the biggest addition on the offensive line in my opinion, and he will be coming in over the summer, be here for the fall, so he's not here for the spring yet. Same goes for the latest addition, Jeff Weimer, and this is a wide receiver West Virginia added from Idaho State, who has played 4 college football seasons, 2 of them at the JUCO level, and 3 of those 4 seasons he's had over 1,000 yards. So he's been the top target on 3 different programs now. Last year at Idaho State had over 120 targets, ended up with over 70 catches, nearly 1,200 yards. So really great numbers from Jeff Weimer throughout his career, and you're getting a very experienced receiver that you're adding to that room that I really like, because he can play outside, which is something West Virginia needed. They only really added Cam Vaughn as another outside receiver, so they needed some of those wide receivers, and Jeff Weimer will be one of those. So before I name my transfer signing superlatives, I'll pull it up on the screen for you guys watching the video version, but I'm going to read off all the transfers here. So these are the names, the pool that I'm kind of selecting from these transfer signing superlatives, guys. But defensive back Jordy Scruggs, wide receiver Man Singleton, offensive lineman Walter Youngbear, wide receiver Gerard Bowie, tight end Jacob Barrick, quarterback Jalen Henderson, wide receiver Cyrus Trawl, running back L.J. Turner, linebacker Ashton Woods, wide receiver Cam Vaughn, kicker Ethan Head, tight end Johnny Pascuzzi, defensive back Jordan Walker, defensive back Derek Carter, defensive back Fred Perry, defensive back Michael Coach Jr., defensive back Justin Harrington, linebacker Chase Wilson, running back Ty Edwards, offensive lineman Kimo Macanaioli, defensive end Braden Siders, offensive lineman Wyatt Minor, offensive lineman Robbie Martin, defensive back William Davis, defensive back Devontae Golden Nelson, offensive lineman Tykeist Crawford, quarterback Max Brown, defensive back Jason Chambers, defensive lineman Keenan Eck, linebacker Jamori Robinson, offensive lineman William Reed, and wide receiver Jeff Weimer, which I think actually Jamori Robinson is playing defensive line now, confirmed at West Virginia since they announced the signings. But you see, just from the time it took me to list out the names there that West Virginia has added in the transfer portal, the phenomenal job that this coaching staff has done bringing in a slew of guys, and of course the high school guys coming in as well, as we talked about earlier. But who are some of my favorites? Who are going to be the big impact guys? What are my superlatives for this transfer class? Let's talk about the main segment here. Let's get to it here. Let's start with the biggest impact addition on the offensive side. I think that this is one of the harder ones for me to name because there are multiple ones that you could go with here. I think there's been some big additions along the offensive line. I think there's been some big additions at receiver. I think at quarterback as well. And of course, running back, quarterback, both are vital positions in a Rich Rod offense, and guys that are going to be getting a ton of action. So, if one of the quarterbacks you added ends up being the starter, that could potentially end up being the biggest impact addition. But I think with that still being up in the air, I can't necessarily go with a quarterback here. So I'm going to go, what I ultimately went down to was a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. And I think personally, I am going to land on wide receiver Cam Vaughn. You guys know he was one of my most highly sought after prospects in the portal, near the top of my list throughout the whole process. And so he's going to be my biggest impact addition on the offense. That's who gets my superlative there on that side, is Cam Vaughn for the Mountaineers. And my reason why is really something that I've talked about previously. I don't know if I've covered it on the podcast itself here, but I know I've talked about it in live streams. You go back, you look at the Neil Brown era, you never had a wide receiver hit 800 yards receiving. Not once across the 6-year period. And you look at Cam Vaughn, and here's a guy that was a high school quarterback that came into Jack State. They redshirted him for a year, turned him into a wide receiver, so hasn't been playing the position that long. And despite that, as a redshirt freshman, has over 800 yards receiving, so does something no receiver did in the Neil Brown era, despite not playing the position in a long time and despite playing in a run-heavy offense, which Rich Rod utilizes, as we know. So I think the sky is kind of the limit for Cam Vaughn and his capability here in that Rich Rod offense, especially after seeing what he did as a redshirt freshman. So that's going to be my biggest impact addition on the offensive side. Flip it over for my next superlative, and let's talk my biggest impact addition on the defensive side. And I think this one is the probably, most recent addition to the defense, and it's one that we were super excited about. Wouldn't be a possibility without the JUCO ruling, as a lot of these guys that joined West Virginia may not be able to do that. They get that extra final year and decide to hit the portal, and West Virginia reaps the benefits of that in a lot of ways, and no way bigger, in my opinion, than the addition of Jamori Robinson, who has been confirmed he's going to be a defensive lineman at WVU. They listed him at 262, so even bigger than we thought when he was originally coming over from UTSA. But the reason why this is the biggest impact addition for me on the defensive side, and it wasn't without a little bit of back and forth, because you guys know I'm really high in Michael Coates Jr. at cornerback as well. But Jamori Robinson, I think, is the biggest impact addition for me on the defensive side, because West Virginia really just hasn't had a guy that's came in this already made as a pass rusher, already, proven to be a phenomenal pass rusher with great instincts, phenomenal defensive player. Overall, he just won Defensive Player of the Year in the AAC conference, guys. I mean, double-digit sacks. West Virginia hasn't had a pass rusher come in like this probably since Bruce Irvin. So I think that's something that has to be, accounted for, and why I picked him over Michael Coates, because when you look at Michael Coates, yes, he's going to make a big impact to a West Virginia secondary that struggled last year, and he's going to help overhaul a West Virginia pass defense. But WVU just had an All-American corner a couple of seasons ago in Beanie Bishop. West Virginia hasn't had an impactful pass rusher in quite a while. So that's why Jamori Robinson, to me, is the biggest impact addition on the defensive side. Now let's get into a fun one here. Diamond in the Rough edition. Who is the guy that's probably flying under the radar, not enough people are talking about in this class because he's not, highly rated. He doesn't have the splashy name that, some of the ones we just talked about, the Cam Vaughns, the Jamori Robinsons of the world, and some of the others. Who's a guy that's probably flying under the radar in this class that people aren't talking enough about? And to me, I'm going to stick on the defense with this one. I think it's Chase Wilson at the linebacker position, coming over from Colorado State Chase Wilson is an absolute tackling machine, guys. He really racked up over 200 tackles in the past season. Last year he was hurt and still had 90-plus tackles. And when I go turn on this guy's tape, for one, he's going to be probably a leader in the locker room. He has that kind of aspect to his game, which you can't undervalue that. That's just so big, so important. So I think Chase Wilson is really big in that aspect because he has that fire to him. Along with that, you see when you watch his tape, some of it showcases some of his pregame speeches he gave to the team, and it just shows that hard edge. He's going to fit in great with this culture. And I think when you watch him play, to me, guys, this is Reed Williams. This is Reed Williams of the defense in 2025. That's who it reminds me of, is some of those great linebackers we had in those previous, Rich Rod era defenses, and Reed Williams is one of the main ones that comes to my mind. And Chase Wilson, I think, can be that type of guy in this defense, and him and Reed Carrico together could be fun to watch at the linebacker position. And despite what we lost in, Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan, I think Chase Wilson is going to fill in more than admirably and more than capably, and I really, really like the way this guy plays the game, and he's a tackling machine. He's going to be all over the field. So that's my diamond in the rough addition that I haven't heard enough people talk about, is linebacker Chase Wilson, which brings us to my top 5 favorite additions overall. I guess we'll run this down from 5 to 1. Well, let's go from 1 to 5 because I think we've already given away 2 of them, because my biggest impact addition on offense and defense are both going to be present here. So let's go ahead and list them. Let's go wide receiver Cam Vaughn at number 2 here. I don't want to underline that. For you guys watching on the video side, I am filling this in here visually as well. Cam Vaughn as my number 2. And then let's go, my number 1 is, of course, Jamori Robinson on the defensive line there as my number 1. So, of my top 5 favorite additions, Jamori Robinson and Cam Vaughn obviously in that list as number 1 and number 2. And then as we talk about some others, Chase Wilson I could probably put on there because of the diamond in the rough status. But I want to highlight some of these other ones that West Virginia has picked up, because another one that I went back and forth with on the diamond in the rough segment there was the one that I think I'm going to list here third. And I know some people are probably surprised that I'm putting this high, but it's Will Reed, guys. Offensive lineman William Reed, I think, is a huge addition that's going to be an instant day one starter on a West Virginia offensive line that was really depleted, and West Virginia did a great job filling those holes. But to me, Will Reed was my highest on the wish list of offensive linemen that we were targeting, and glad to see us reel him in, although it was later in the process, and I know he won't be here for spring, so maybe some of the others that come in early could get a leg up on him. He's a guy that's obviously super smart coming from the Ivy League, but you turn on his tape, guys, and he has an 8-minute highlight video that I watched, and it's just nothing but pancake after pancake, and this guy is going to be an absolute force in the Rich Rod offense. So I think that Will Reed is one of my favorite transfer additions for WVU. And then I think we have to go to the defensive side and talk about cornerback Michael Coach Jr., who is one that I've raved about a ton. He was one of the top cornerbacks in the country last year, whether you look statistically where he was top 15 in multiple categories, you look PFF rating where he did a great job there, and his story is phenomenal as well. Just started playing football not long ago. I think he walked on at a JUCO and balled out, and then ended up transferring up, and then ends up at Nevada as one of the top cornerbacks in the country, one of the top rated transfer corners in the portal. West Virginia is able to snag him, and of course we're able to really fight off some big-time suitors, including Ole Miss, who he didn't even go on to a visit for after he left WVU. So Michael Coach Jr. there at number 4. And then at number 5, this one's tough because we really made so many good additions in the transfer portal. But I think for me, I got to go signal caller, because that's one of the obviously more sexy positions is, your skill position players, your quarterbacks, your halfbacks, your receivers. And I think this is one that I did toss up as being a big impact addition on the offense, because, guys, I go back and forth between Nico and Jalen Henderson, and I think we can't rule out Max Brown as well. But I think Jalen Henderson has a really good shot to win this starting job for West Virginia in 2025, and I really like his game. After we added him, of course, I went and played with him for a little bit on College Football 25, the video game, and I like the way he plays on there as well. He's really fun to play with there, and I think he brings, of course, a little bit more of a dynamic aspect that Nico doesn't possess, where he could potentially break you off a 30, 40, 50-yard run. Not saying Nico's a bad runner, but he's just not as explosive. Jalen Henderson has a little bit more speed, a little bit more agility and acceleration, and I think they're comparable, in the passing game. Jalen Henderson, when you watch some of the starts that he got at Texas A&M, he really did some impressive things as a passer, so I think he's very much in this competition, and the way that he plays, I really like his game. I really like the way that he can fit in a Rich Rod offense, so he's one of my favorite additions, guys. So to round out our superlatives here in our main segment, my top 5 favorite additions: number 5, Jalen Henderson; number 4, Michael Coach Jr.; number 3, Will Reed; number 2, Cam Vaughn; and number 1, Jamori Robinson. But hey, these are just my superlatives, guys. I would love to hear some of your alls. If you're watching the video version, leave it in the comments there. Tell me your top 5 favorite additions, your diamond in the rough, your biggest impact on each side of the ball. Those are the superlatives. Thought it would be fun to name these here. Be a good podcast episode here for 217. So that's exactly what we do. So just to review my transfer signing superlatives here from this episode: my biggest impact addition on offense, the superlative there goes to wide receiver Cam Vaughn from Jackson State. My biggest impact addition on defense, the superlative there goes to defensive lineman Jamori Robinson from UTSA. And then my quote-unquote diamond in the rough addition, I think, is linebacker Chase Wilson from Colorado State. And then, of course, my top 5 favorite personally is Jamori Robinson, Cam Vaughn, Will Reed, Michael Coach Jr., and Jalen Henderson. So there you have it, guys. My transfer signing superlatives there. Hope you all enjoyed that. We'll wrap up 217 here really quickly, but just want to remind you guys one more time, if you're on the YouTube version, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Helps us a ton. And subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on this Mountaineer football coverage. And we appreciate you guys listening on the audio side as well. If you listen there, leave us a 5-star rating. But before we wrap up, just want to do a quick update on the Mountaineer men's hoops team. Not the greatest week, not the results we wanted, and definitely not the results we expected either. West Virginia had some really tough games, and, they had back-to-back really tough games against Houston and then Iowa State, and then, of course, beat Iowa State when they were ranked number 2 in the country. So we thought, hey, then they're playing Arizona State and Kansas State. They're going to be back in the rankings, and those are 2 games they could win, so they could have a chance to climb those rankings before they get into kind of the back half of this schedule. And instead, what ends up happening is West Virginia gets ranked and then loses 2 in a row. So both times this season they've gotten ranked, they've lost the following game. So I don't know, it's the curse of being ranked thus far this year. But I think more than anything, it's unfortunately the lack of depth is probably going to come home to roost a little bit down the stretch of this schedule, as fatigue starts to take a toll at times, as West Virginia loses to Arizona State 65-57 at home, and then loses to Kansas State on the road 73-60. Kansas State had been on a losing streak. Arizona State had only had 1 conference win prior to that game. So 2 teams West Virginia was expected to beat, really, they fall to, which is not good news when you look on the rest of the schedule, because coming up next you have Houston. Don't like our chances there. However, I think the silver lining is following that game against Houston, which you hope West Virginia doesn't go on a 3-game losing skid, but we got to look at that as a real possibility, as Houston's one of the best teams in college basketball. If you are on a 3-game losing skid, you're going to not have the best record. Right now, record update, West Virginia 13-6 overall, 4-4 in the Big 12. But then your schedule kind of lightens up. You see no rankings on any of these teams that you have across the final games there of the season. So West Virginia will have a good chance to secure the probably 5 to 6 wins they need to secure their NCAA tournament status for sure, which, of course, if you add wins in the Big 12 tournament, then you're really just, tacking on to that. So I don't think you need to be concerned yet about West Virginia's NCAA tournament status. 13 wins. They've done a good job, getting some wins over big-time programs. They're going to help them with quad 1 wins, and the back half of their schedule is a lot less tough than some of these other games they've had to play in the front half, so they should be able to easily squeak out, another 5 to 7 wins, I think, over these last, 11 to 12 games. We'll see what happens, but that's just kind of a brief update on the Mountaineer men's hoops team as we continue through episode 217 here on the CRW podcast and get ready to wrap up this one. But before we wrap up, can't thank you guys enough for tuning into this one. Hope you all have enjoyed it, as we've updated some WVU sports news there, some recruiting news, 4 nice additions for the late 2025 class there. And, of course, our transfer signing superlatives. A lot of fun putting that together. And then the men's hoop update. Hopefully they have a better result Wednesday when they take on Houston. At least it's in the Coliseum, and it should be rocking with another top 10 opponent. Would be crazy for them to get another top 10 win. Here's to hoping it happens. Be back to chat with you guys again in the near future. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hey, and remember, check out that Magic Mind, guys. It really will help you a ton. No joke about that. I use it myself, so I can completely 100% vouch for it. Be sure, use our link. You can get 45% off, guys, here through the end of January. magicmind.com/countryroadsJAN. Be back with more episodes of the CRW podcast in the future. If you guys on the audio side, be sure hop over to the YouTube where I'm putting out almost daily coverage on Mountaineer sports. So appreciate you guys tuning in to episode 217. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those